Welcome to the Business with Beers podcast. This is the place where we help entrepreneurs expand their business, build their wealth, and generate passive income. I'm your host, Brian Beers, an entrepreneur who's on a mission to inspire growth from everyone around me. Remember that you need to take the actions others won't, and you can live the life that others don't. Please be sure to check out my weekly newsletter that now drops every Thursday. It includes one quote, one tweet, one podcast recommendation, plus some business and investing insight from me. It's short and it's sweet. My goal is to provide you with just a couple gold nuggets to help inspire your growth. Go to brianbeers.com to subscribe. Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to bring you Dave Wood. Dave is a 30-year veteran in the franchise business. He owned 20 Dominoes at one point for 30 years. He is a passive investor in multiple brands, including Jersey Mike's, Papa John's, some Starbucks, and he's the franchisor of two emerging brands. So I'm excited today to bring him on and as part of kind of a live recording with a number of people who are part of our franchise freedom community. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So to start, how did you get into franchising?
So I started out the way that a lot of people do was totally by accident for me. I started out delivering pizzas when I was in college. I went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I lived down the hall from a guy that some of you may have heard of. His name was Michael Jordan. And he went on to do better things after he left college, but it was an interesting time to be at UNC, and it was fun. And I started delivering pizzas because I liked beer and pizza and money way more than I liked school. I love school. I just didn't like class very much, and so that's not a great plan. So I started out delivering pizzas, and after a while, I started managing the local Dominoes pizza store. At the time, there were about 200 Dominoes. There's over 15,000 today, so there's been quite a change. And I was 20 years old, so it was actually 40 years ago, not 30, that I started in this business. And at the age of 22, I was running 30 Dominoes pizza stores for a franchisee group out of North Carolina and Atlanta. And then left there to open my own up in Northern Virginia. So we left there. We opened our first one in 1985.
Okay. And how old were you then?
24 when I opened the first one. And fortunately, it did very well. It was one of the top 10 stores in the Domino's chain, which had grown dramatically in those years. There were over 2,000 Domino's at the time. So it was one of the top 10 in the country, which was fantastic. A little town called Manassas, Virginia, which is famous to Civil War buffs, and more recently famous as the home of a woman named Lorena Bobbitt. And we won't go into why Lorena Bobbitt is well known.
Okay, that's fine. So it's 1985. This is a new location you opened up?
Yeah, so we built all our Dominoes. We built from the ground up. We did not buy any. We opened them all from scratch.
And your role at this point, you're running the show, like you're in the store every day running it?
My wife and I are in the store every day. We have a little 1-year-old boy at the time. He is now, how old is he? He's like 38 now.
Yep.
So we had a little 1-year-old son, and she was in there helping me. He would be hanging out with her or me. And yep, we're there every day, just getting it all going. And a lot of fun, a lot of work. I met my wife at Domino's. She was an employee of mine, so I don't encourage employer-employee relations, but what the heck, it happened.
It was the 80s. So then how long did it take then to open the second location?
So we opened the second location 6 months later. Okay. Like I said, the store was very profitable. To give you an idea, in 1985, we were doing between $35,000 and $40,000 a week in sales at that first restaurant. Okay. So it was very, very strong.
How'd you do it? Like, what do you accredit that to?
Opening the door and answering the telephone and giving excellent service, getting the pizzas out. We would have 30 people delivering pizzas on a Friday night out of that restaurant. We would do a couple hundred pizzas an hour.
And highly efficient, following the process, just
very efficient, very much. I had been trained in the Domino's system was very interesting. If I can go off on that tangent, Yeah, Domino's was founded by a guy named Tom Monahan, and Tom started franchising, and his first three franchisees failed miserably, and none of them had any restaurant experience. So Tom at that point decided he would never sell a franchise to someone who had not managed a Domino's pizza store. So in 1985, when I opened my first restaurant, my franchise fee was $0. And I did have to pay royalties, of course. My franchise fee was $0. And every franchisee that opened a Domino's Pizza from 75 on until 10 years ago when I left there, managed a restaurant for at least a year before they became a franchisee. And that was Tom's secret sauce to having great operations, because the pizza, quite honestly, was so-so. I like it, but it was so-so. It wasn't the best pizza. But what you got from Domino's was operational fanatics, because the franchisees knew operations very well.
And for you at this point, you had already been running 30 locations, right? This wasn't your first rodeo by any means.
Right.
So you already knew what
I started out as I was rookie manager of the year in 1982 for Domino's. So, it's stuff that I knew. I knew it left and right.
So 35, 40 grand a week. I mean, you're making a ton of money probably. So then you then use that money to then go open up the next location?
Yeah, we opened every location after that out of cash flow. So we opened the second one 6 months after the first one, the third one about 7 months after that, the fourth one 6 months after that. So in less than 2 years, we opened 4 locations.
Okay. And all self-funded. So no debt, all self-funded from cash flow.
Only debt on the first one, because I did not have enough money to open the first one. But after that was no debt.
Okay. All in the Virginia area?
Yeah, we just stayed in Northern Virginia, just outside DC. We surrounded Dulles Airport.
Okay. And then so then talk about how like this phase, you're starting to kind of build out the management team. I guess you probably then move into more of like a district manager role, as we would call it. Or what does that look like?
I think the toughest move for someone who starts with one location, I think the toughest change is going from one restaurant to two. Because with one restaurant, as you hit on early, I was there every day. The second restaurant was almost an hour away, because that's where we found the next location. And so I was splitting my time in my 50 hours a week or so. I'm splitting in between 2 restaurants. So I take on the overhead of having a general manager in each location, because I'm also set up to grow. I'm not stopping at 2. Our goal at the beginning, was 10 in the area that we had the rights to. So the biggest change is going from 1 to 2 and, going back and forth between them. But yeah, I go to more of a supervisory level, an area manager, whatever you want to call it, and have a general manager in each location. And that's so crucial, is building that team you can count on. Yep.
Yeah, we see that in Midas too. A lot of times guys with one location, they go to that second location. A lot of times is where they really struggle. It's because, they don't, like, they're the manager having the success and they don't replace themselves. Right. And then they may have an assistant that helps them, but they don't it's not at the same level that they do. And then that now they're diluted and they're split. And a lot of times then they'll struggle and then sell off the second location, just stick back to the original.
Some people they're just not willing to pay what you got to pay to get somebody, because they've been paying an assistant, way lower than they need to pay someone to really have the talent to step up. And it's a big difference. You can open second location and actually make less money than you did with one, because of that overhead.
Yep. Yeah. So the big part is having that vision. Like you said, here's the 5-year plan or whatever. And it's a stair, because what we see, it's like a stair step, right? And you invest in it, and then it can get you to so far, and then you invest and it gets you so far. And so I think having that vision and not just going into it blindly is key, especially for those leadership level payroll numbers.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. All right. So you got couple locations, 4 or 5 years. What's the next kind of big jump? Is it a similar pattern where you're doing like a couple every month, or what does it look like from there?
Yeah, so we opened in a matter of 5 years, we had 10 open. So 6 years. It took us from 1985 to 1990, so a little over 5 years. to get to where we had 10 locations open. And then it was a matter of waiting for the population growth in our market to be enough to support new locations. And so that's the only thing that held our growth back, was the markets weren't quite big enough, but we were in a big growth market. And so that's why that 10 store market ended up being 20. By the end of the 90s, we had 20 locations open, and we had pretty much saturated our market at that point.
So to give us an idea, what were those 20 locations doing a week or sales, or however you measured it?
So Dominoes as a whole, like in 2000, Dominoes averaged about 600,000 a unit, and we averaged about 1.2 million a unit.
Yep. Okay.
So we were about double.
Yep. Any idea what they're doing today?
Yeah, they're averaging a little over $1 million now. According to my, I still have a lot of friends that own Dominoes, and so they're, I think they're averaging around just over $1 million.
Okay. And back then, what did the margins look like? Like on that 1.2 a store?
Oh, they were freaking awesome. They were awesome. It was in the low 20%. So
okay.
22%. The numbers were great. We also, all of our managers were paid 25% of profit on top of their salary. So they were we were all aligned in the same direction.
Okay. Interesting. Was that paid weekly, monthly?
Monthly.
Okay. How'd you take into new, because we've explored this idea, but then you get into like equipment purchases, depreciation, interest, like things on the back end. How'd you guys deal with all that sort of?
So we paid them off. Depreciation came off of their P&L. So that was factored into what they made. So if we took tax,
whatever,
right, if we took tax benefits by taking Section 179, accelerated depreciation on the store level P&L, we did straight line depreciation.
Okay.
So we would adjust it. So they didn't get hit with things that I did for tax advantages, but they also didn't benefit from it either. It was straight line for them.
Was that unique to you guys, or was that common in Dominoes to have a profit sharing?
That was very common in Dominoes. That was Dominoes pretty much paid lower salaries, but then a high, 25% of profits to a general manager is fairly significant. And that was fairly common through Dominoes in the early 80s, through the early 90s. And we continued it after people started phasing it out. But I thought there was plenty to go around, so we continued it.
Yeah, because if you're doing 1.2 million at 20% times 25%, it's $60,000 kind of bonus, right, for the manager, plus whatever salary of 40 or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, our managers were averaging around 100 grand.
Yep. So you think about, in the 90s for Domino, like that's a good paying job.
It was very good, and that's why we got some good people.
So why did you stay local and not look to expand to another part of Virginia or another state? Why did you wait for the market to increase population? So
there were a couple reasons. One, I was up against a larger franchisee. To two of the four sites around me were a guy named Frank Meeks, who was a very, very dear friend of mine, and he owned about 70 Domino's pizza stores in the DC area. And so I was limited. I couldn't go that direction because that was Frank's area. And my position at the time, my theory at the time, was I wanted everything within an hour's drive of where I lived. I wanted to be able to visit every restaurant. You asked me the other day if there's something that I know now that I would do different. And that's one of the things I probably would have done different, is I would have taken my flag and planted it in another market and said, so let's grow in Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's grow in Richmond, somewhere that we could have established a second headquarters and a second set of 10, 15, 20 locations. That's probably a change I would make if I could go back and do it over. Once we got to 20 locations in the mid 90s, we would start looking somewhere else.
Okay. What do you think held you back, or having that feeling, that need that you needed to drive within an hour?
It was just the feeling I had that I wanted to keep that closeness with the restaurants. I wanted to be able to visit them, whenever I wanted to without having to plan it that far ahead. And I didn't go that often. I had great area managers that worked for me that did the visits. We had when we had 20 locations, we had 3 supervisory level people working for us out in the restaurants, and they did a great job. But I still wanted to be close enough I could do it. And that, I guess it was just my personality. Maybe I was a little too much of a control freak and felt that need, but that is one thing I would do different. But I would have to have the right person to lead the operations in that other town.
Yep. Yeah, we felt that too when we were in Philadelphia and like could drive to all of them. It's similar size. I mean, we had 14 or 13 or 12, something that range at the time. And then that fear of, hey, we go to another market and it's like, I don't know. We correlated our success to our direct involvement and our hands-on. And we thought if we go to another market where we're not hands-on and it's all other, not the owners, that they wouldn't do as well. And we want to be proud of every location, and that like there's this fear of failure if we couldn't be directly involved. And then,
yep, I think that's what it is.
Eventually we got over that and said, all right, well, let's give it a shot. Other people can do it. Like, so can we. And like you said, if you can hire a really good person who can, they're not going to be as good as you, but if they can be 80% in terms of like hiring the right people, holding people accountable, being proud of locations, et cetera, that, then becomes a lot more scalable. And so.
Absolutely.
But the key hire, the key leadership positions, I think is it. And yeah, it's a tough thing because there's a lot of limiting beliefs around that, and there's fear and all that stuff. But I think once you can get over it, like your buddy was 70, he got over it, right? I mean, he was all over the place.
No, those were all Metro
local.
DC. Those were all, but I do have buddies that have them in 4 different major markets. I've got friends that own 150 now, and they're from California to Texas to Florida. They are definitely all over the place.
So on this, we touched a little bit on our last call, but for other people here, one of the things I've noticed is food is the most scalable franchise, more than automotive, more than home services, probably more than other retail concepts. And so why do you think that is? Why is food? It's not uncommon to hear somebody has 70, 100, 500. You go to the Daring group, they've got whatever, hundreds, thousands. The Flynn group has.
Yeah, I think it's just because people have to eat. And they have to eat 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, depending on who they are. And, people don't, as a general rule, people don't like to cook. They love to eat, but they don't like to cook, and they love variety. And I think it's just, if you can get the food consistently right, you can repeat that easily. And it does seem like they're, very scalable compared to other categories of franchises. And I think it's just because people want to eat, and we don't have to compete with the Amazons of the world.
I agree on all that. But in my business, people have to get their cars fixed, and they don't want to do it themselves, and we don't compete with Amazon. So I don't know. Part of it, I think, is a lot of it is more, it's the product. I think it's because it's more product driven. Right? Where you can quickly train, I think it's staffing, right? You can quickly train people for the most part and help deliver a consistent product and experience. I think that's part of it?
I think that is. I mean, if you actually look behind the scenes in most restaurants that scale, the operations are relatively simple. Even though the food may be delicious, depending on what restaurant you're at, they have the systems down, they have the right equipment, they have the systems in place. And a lot of their prep is done off-site at their supplier level. And so the food comes in and it's actually relatively simple. So you can train people relatively easily.
Yeah, that's what I see as the advantage. We looked into it. It was like, you have a bigger pool of applicants. It's easier to train, and it's more of an assembly of a sort, right? More than
absolutely
a making, at least in depends on the concept, obviously, but in many of them.
Right, but the majority of the ones that get large, most of your fast food and your fast casual, it really is assemblies. Yep. As opposed to, you don't need a chef in the restaurants that can scale large.
One of the things I think is interesting, or like you talk on, is a lot of the food almost every food franchise requires you to purchase your food from the franchisor controlled supplier in a lot of cases, right?
Absolutely.
How do you view that relationship? I know in Midas and other brands, there's contention about forced suppliers, because then they control the cost that you buy it at. They're recommending what price. Like then they're kind of getting into this margin control. And if they decide, hey, we want to increase flour by X amount, like you're kind of like, you can't buy it from anybody else, right? So I don't know. Can you speak at all to, is that a real concern, or is that kind of like, everybody, they have people's best interest?
So I think it's a huge concern, in the Domino's world. Domino's biggest profit maker for years was what they called the commissary system, which was the food supplier. And it was absolutely huge. It was a big bone of contention. And technically, we did not have to buy anything from them. Didn't have to. But they made it really difficult if you didn't. And so, there was a group in Seattle that got together and bought their cheese directly from a cheese supplier. And so Domino's raised the price on their dough. So everyone that bought everything from Domino's, the commissary still paid the same thing. But the people who got the savings by buying their cheese elsewhere were now making it up by paying Domino's for the dough. Ooh. And because the dough making process, while not that difficult, is very labor intensive if you do it in an individual restaurant. Whereas in the Domino's commissary facility, it's very easy to do with their, it's a manufacturing process. So I think that's a big bone of contention. I think that's one of the things when you're evaluating a franchise, look at not just the direct cost, the royalties, the marketing, but also the indirect costs, such as, how much do they control where you can buy stuff from? Your smaller brand, you have more leeway in what you buy from whom. The larger brands, it's absolutely usually a big profit center.
Yep. And from there, in their defense, they want consistent products, so they want consistent suppliers, right? Like,
Sure.
I get their perspective, but it's this from the franchisor, especially in food, but in non-food, like in automotive or any of these other brands, like, I don't know, I think sometimes they get a little zealous in terms of what they're looking to do. So,
right. But if Tyson's is making your pepperoni that comes into you in a box that has the Domino's label on it, and you can get the same pepperoni in a box that just says Tyson's on it, the exact same product, then it should come down to price. But sometimes it's just not worth the fight. There's not enough money there for the fight over it.
Yep. One of the questions we had earlier was, are there any other red flags that you would advise someone to look out for, when analyzing a franchisor? So that's one of them is like, are there, supplier controlling restraints? Any other ones that you kind of look for that you've heard horror stories about?
A couple of things that I would look at, is like I said a minute ago about something else, was the management turnover. What's the management team look like? If the founders have left, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Tom Monahan left Domino's in 1999 when he sold it. And Domino's has not missed a beat since then, other than a little adjustment when he left. But the founders leaving is not necessarily bad at all, because most founders are going to leave. They're going to at some point cash out when the company gets to where they're ready to make a change in their lives. But if you're getting a lot of management team turnover, that's a concern to me. So once again, you can look at the FDD tells you how long the people have been there. They tell you what jobs they had before they got to them, if it was less than 5 years ago. So that, what to me is a red flag. There's too much turnover. Yep. Because to me, when you're buying a franchise, you're entering into a long-term relationship. You have to really like the product. Doesn't mean you have to like it as far as eating it or using it, but you have to like it as far as doing business in it. And you have to really like the management team, because you're going to be working with that team for, hopefully 10, 15, 20 years, or until you decide it's time to leave. So those are things that are big to me. And then, of course, a lot of sold but not open locations. If they've sold a bunch that haven't opened yet, which are all disclosed in the FDD, why are they not opening? Why does someone buy a location they haven't opened it yet? So I think that can be a big deal. And once again, all those names are in the FDD. Call people that bought a franchise 2 years ago and didn't open it yet. Call them and find out why. What did they learn that kept them from opening?
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, one of the jokes in Midas that we make as owners or franchisees to the corporate guys whenever they want to like change these things is saying, hey, listen, like you're going to be gone in a few years. We're still going to be here. That, we need to look out for our best interests, over the long term, not just like whatever the short-term benefit is. So I know what you mean there. And yeah, that's a good one. Hey, so one of the other questions we got here live is for someone considering being a franchisee, an emerging brand, possibly, the first 10 or so, any tips on due diligence? They're not going to have, they might have a few franchisees to call, but they're not going to have many, or there's like a few sold, right, but not open.
Sure.
So what are some recommendations you have for that?
So a couple of recommendations. One is obviously if the franchisor is not disclosing their profits, their item 19, you have to wonder why. And I looked at an FDD for somebody a few days ago where the franchisor was disclosing their sales, but not their profits. Well, if you're disclosing sales, but not profits, I can tell you as a franchisor, there's only one reason, and that is the profits aren't very good. So
especially for new ones, right? We're talking about new ones and they have one corporate location.
Yep.
And they're saying they do $1 million in sales versus another one, say $1 million, and they're showing like we're netting 150 or whatever it is.
Sure.
Yep. Okay.
And that's the big difference. If you're talking, one of those emerging brands, like the question was about, getting into emerging brands, if they're not giving you details, there's got to be a reason why. And, they'll give you a reason. Every franchisor knows they're going to be asked that question if they don't disclose it. So they've got a rehearsed answer for you. And the answer may be truthful, but the bottom line, the real answer is because there's not enough profits there. Because if they could show it, they would. So to me, any franchisor that doesn't show their profits in an item 19 in a small franchise system, that's a big red flag. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It means it's a big red flag that you have to dig into more about why. If someone has a few franchisees, then that's very helpful. But if you're that first, franchisee, you've got to love the product and you got to love the founders and the management team and make sure that you see them as people that can help you build the business you want to build.
Yep. Yeah, I think early on, you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with the founder if you're one of the top 10, I'd imagine. Because for them, their entire success of growing that franchise is really dependent on those first few people succeeding. Like if it's risk for you, but it's also risk for them because if you fail, they're not going to sell anymore if their first couple don't do it. So I think it's a two-way street and a two-way risk there of having a good relationship. Absolutely.
But that's, to me, that's one of the biggest things is read the FDD. If you don't understand the FDD, you're not alone. The most important sections of the FDD are items 6, 7, 19, and 20. And the rest of it, item 1, which is the franchise the franchise leadership. Those are the ones you need to really look at. The rest of it is basically filler, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But just those are the ones you need to look at, and you need to really, like I said, love the product, whatever it is, love the business, and love that management team. Those are the keys to me. If you don't think the management team is right for you, then run away as fast as you can.
Yep. If you get that icky feeling from them, or they're just trying to sell it and whatever, not truly.
Yeah, they try to sell too hard. There's a reason.
Yep. Where it's more of a partnership, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's really what we're doing. Great. So that's probably a good transition. Maybe you could speak to a little bit on, so now you have two new brands, right? That you're a franchisor for that are emerging concepts. Can you speak to, I guess, one or both, like what they are and why you started them?
Yeah. So I've started, this is my third and fourth brands. I built a frozen yogurt brand and sold that. I built a pizza brand and sold that. I think one of the things that happened is for 30 years, I did Domino's Pizza and only Domino's Pizza. Now I like to do more stuff and I like building things. So right before the pandemic, we started a company called Mahana Fresh, which is a very healthy restaurant. It's a fast casual with a service line similar to a Chipotle. And we don't have any microwaves. We don't have any freezers. We don't have any fryers. It's a very healthy concept. The food is very good. All the food was developed by a chef that we brought in to consult with us. I'm not a chef. I'm not even a very good cook. I'm an operations guy, not a chef or a cook. And yeah, we brought him in to do all the food for us. He still consults with us from time to time when we do a new product. And we had terrible timing. We were set up for people walking in the door, beautiful restaurants, and we opened 2 restaurants right before the pandemic hit. And honestly, both those restaurants closed. One of them because the owner got COVID twice in the first 6 months of COVID, and he just gave up. And another one, just the timing wasn't right. It just he opened at a big university, and all the students left and didn't come back. And so we have 5 locations open. We got 5 more opening in the first half of next year. It's a very nice concept. The one negative for it that we made a mistake is you've got to have food experience to run that place. We have a couple of very good franchisees that don't have food experience. I'll change my wording a little bit. You're better off if you have food experience in running a Mahana Fresh. The other concept that I got involved in just under a year ago, you don't need food experience at all. It's called Hot Chicken Kitchen. It is a Nashville style fried chicken restaurant. And I got introduced, a mutual friend introduced me to the founder. They put together a great concept. The restaurant does awesome sales. It's an incredibly simple menu. You got chicken sandwiches, chicken tenders, and French fries is basically the entire menu. And does great sales, great profits, but the founder had no idea how to franchise it. So I came in, invested into it, and we've started rolling out the franchise program. We've sold about 20 franchises in the past 90 days, and we've got quite a few others we're working on. That one is, we have location number 5 opens tomorrow. A year ago, there was 1 location open, but location 5 opens tomorrow. And then we've got we expect to open about 15 of them, maybe 20 next year.
Okay.
So it's growing very quickly. And I think one of the reasons is the very limited menu and simple operation.
Okay. And so, can you, what is the item 19 on that one?
The item 19 on Hot Chicken Kitchen in 2021, the only restaurant that was open did 1.5 million in sales and had an EBITDA of $385,000. So it's totally killer numbers. And our item 7, the cost to open, I was just in our Sarasota restaurant right before this call. And your item 7 to open is $170,000 is the low end, and the Sarasota franchisee, spent even lower than the low end there. And that's the thing that makes it so nice is if he's able to do the numbers like the first location, he's getting in for $170,000 and has the potential to make over $300,000 in profit. So that one is just, those numbers are ridiculous.
How long was that? The one that did 1.5 in 2021, how long was that one open?
It opened in November of 2020. So It was only open. So it celebrated its 2-year anniversary 2 weeks ago.
Yep. Great. So that leads to another question we got here from the group is how should someone think about financing their first transaction or perhaps their first couple? Best practices that you've seen people use?
So, the one that most people go with is an SBA loan. you should check. That's another thing you should check on the franchise you're looking at. Are they on the SBA franchise registry? You don't have to be financed by the SBA, but it's quicker and easier if you are. So SBA franchise registry is not hard to get on. So if somebody's not on it, they haven't tried, or that's a red flag. But like at Hot Chicken Kitchen, we've been trying for 6 months and the SBA is just backed up. So even though I just said it's a red flag, there's no problems with our application, but it's just slow for some reason. So that the SBA, they'll finance 70%, I think, on a non-real estate based business. So if you buy the property, it's a different set of numbers I can't talk about because I'm not familiar with them. But in general, I think they'll finance 70%. So you still have to come up with the 30% some other way. And if you have it yourself, if not, friends and family. I mean, you got to get creative. Our first restaurant, my father-in-law helped us. I didn't have enough money. My father-in-law helped us get a loan. He guaranteed the loan. Is the only reason we were able to open our first restaurant.
Yep. With the SBA, my recommendation is making sure you're using a lender that specializes in SBA loans. There's a ton that will say they do it, but like they don't actually know what they're doing versus ones it's like it's all they do every day. So it's much quicker. They know all the ins and outs. It'll be a much easier process, which I can provide recommendations to, or there's a number online. And
there's also a couple of companies that specialize in franchises as well.
Yep.
So my first supervisor in Dominoes, that not below me, above me, not the one I employed, a guy and his wife who were actually at my wedding 40 years ago, founded a company in Fort Worth called Fran Fund. And Fran Fund, all they do is help fund franchises. So if you're looking for somebody that's an expert in franchises, go to franfund.com. And there are other people out there, but I've known Jeff for over 40 years. And he's a good guy. They've got a good company. They're a much larger company than just Jeff Sieber, but they know the SBA. They're not a lender, but they help facilitate it with SBA lenders. Make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you put your application in.
Yep. Yeah, they're like a broker to help find.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Great. What are your thoughts on, so all of yours have been builds, right? You've built all of them. For me, it's all been buys, right?
Right.
Growth through acquisition, pros and cons to both. But what do you see the advantages on your strategy of growth through development instead of growth through acquisition?
All the Dominoes that we did were because we were in early and got into territory that was, available and didn't have locations in it. I think one of the advantages is I'm not paying for someone else's profits. If someone's making a nice profit, then you're going to pay them far more than it costs you to open a location. Doesn't mean it's not worth it, but that is a difference. I don't think there's one right way versus wrong way. I consult not for money, just for fun with people all the time on acquisitions they're looking at. And sometimes they're great. But just for me, it's just the way it worked out. When we got involved in Jersey Mike's, once again, we got involved when they had 200 locations 11 years ago. So we got territory that was, still had not been developed. The Papa John's that we're involved in, we actually did buy those. So we did, I don't own those directly. As you said at the beginning, I'm a small passive investor in those. And then the Starbucks, we built 2 and we bought 1. So, there's some variety there, but, for me, it's just the way that my business career took me. I don't think there's a preference. It's just the way it ended up going.
Yeah. And you're a new concept. I think the advantages are you can get to new growing areas with a new concept, versus when you're buying, they're legacy locations and maybe older neighborhoods, like been there a while, right? Versus being on the new part of town or the new areas with the new brand. So like a lot of it's, location based, like, what's available too. So
absolutely.
Great. So what are some of your, what's your primary focus over the next couple of years? Is it the chicken kitchen? Is that the
both of the restaurant chains. I love them both, and they just, it's got to be the right fit. I mean, I can be talking to you about Mahana Fresh and say, you know what, the chicken restaurant's better for you, or vice versa. And to me, it's that simple. It's got to be the right fit. So, restaurants are what I do. Would I like to get into anything else? Yeah, I'd like to get into some other stuff, but not right now. My plate's pretty full. I do look at other stuff all the time. It's very interesting. People call me and share things with me and look at whether I want to get involved with them. And it's just got to be the right fit.
So if you weren't doing food, what would you do? Or what are the other concepts or industries you like?
A good buddy of mine had incredible success in the fitness franchise industry. The thing I love about the fitness industry is, he built Cycle. He started and built Cycle Bar. If you're familiar with that chain, I had lunch with him earlier today. He's actually working with me at Hot Chicken Kitchen now. But I think the big difference is the profitability potential from a fitness brand, which is why it would interest me, is you don't have the food cost. Your only cost other than your capital cost to get open is small labor costs. The subscription model of those fitness places where you're getting whatever it is, whether it's $20 a month or $100 a month, those subscription models where you're hitting someone's credit card every month and you get to a couple thousand members paying you, the subscription models are what would really attract me to. If I was looking for something other than food, I would look at a franchise with a subscription model.
Yep. Great. Cool. Well, I don't know if there's any other questions here from the guys we got live. If not, we'll wrap this thing up. I appreciate your time, Dave. This has been quite insightful for me, and I hope everybody listening as well, to hear about your journey and everything you've done. It's pretty impressive, and I look forward to kind of following you along. And you're a great resource to have here in our group.
Well, thank you very much. And anyone that's in the group, I'm in the group on Facebook. I think it's just my name, Dave Wood. So feel free to message me there if you have any other questions that come up. I got to be honest with you, I very rarely check Facebook Messenger, but I will check it from time to time. But I love the franchise business and I love talking about it. And I really do like talking to people that are just getting started, because there were a couple people that helped me a lot. The franchisee that I first worked for, a guy named Dan Shefty, was an incredible mentor to me for several years. And, it's people that have success in the franchise business need to do like what you're doing, Brian, which is pay it back. And there's plenty of room for everybody. And so very happy to help in any way that I can to talk to anybody. And just wish everybody the best of luck, either in their continuing journey or in finding their first franchise.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And that's something I speak to kind of a lot, is the community aspect. I think there's a community within a franchise with other franchisees, and then obviously, everyone who are also in other franchises are kind of like, brothers in a sense. And I think a lot of people are more than willing to help each other because we're all kind of in the same business. We have different industries, whether it's pizzas or tires or anything else, but we all all follow a similar rule book in a sense.
Absolutely. And when I owned my Dominoes, one of my very best friends owned 50 Papa John's, and fortunately we weren't in the same market, but it didn't matter to me that he owned Papa John's. I mean, it's just, there's plenty of room there. As we told people then, there was plenty of pizza buyers to go around. And it's the same thing. And I don't consider anyone else's success to be at my expense. So happy to help anybody. I agree with you. The Dominoes franchisees are still my friends today because it's a bond, kind of like a fraternity or a sorority. It's a bond that sticks with you.
Yep. It's awesome. Cool. Thanks again. And for anybody else listening who wants to be part of our franchise community, you can go to brianbeers.com/community and fill out the form to join. It's totally free. So Thank you, everyone. And goodbye. That's all we got for this episode with the Business with Beers podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is to rate the show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on your preferred social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find all my links at brianbeers.com. Please just share the podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. And until next time, remember to take the actions others won't, to live the life that others don't.